Hello there, everybody, and this is the explanation to the sixth and final math problem in the Math No Calculator section on my website's short SAT diagnostic. And this is what this one says. It says, what is the value of parentheses 2 plus 8i, another parentheses, times 1 minus 4i, that's a long minus there, minus parentheses 3 minus 2i, times parentheses 6 plus 4i. Then it gives you a little note. It says I equals the square root. That is the square root there. I've got to fix that. The square root of -1. I equals the square root of -1. Well, let me tell you something about I problems on the SAT math. They are really, really easy if you know two things. One is given. The first thing you need to know is that I equals the square root of -1. Do you need to know why? Do you need to know what it means? Just know that I equals the square root of -1. And the other thing that you need to know, which these crafty little test writers did not give you on this one, but if you know it now, you're going to know it on every one of these I problems, is that I squared equals -1. Well, that follows, because if I square both of these sides above, I times I is I squared, and the square root of -1 times the square root of -1 is -1. Do you need to know about all that? Nope. Just know these two things. I equals the square root of -1 and I squared equals -1. In almost every single I problem on the math SAT test, your I's are going to drop out and you're not going to even have to worry about the square root of -1. You'll be left with a lot of I squareds, but all you do is substitute -1 every time you see an I squared. They really are pretty easy if you come in knowing these two things. And I'll show you what we mean here. Now, I believe it was in explanation number 4, maybe in 3, we went through FOIL. FOIL, which stands for first, outer, inner, and last. The FOIL method of multiplying parentheses together. FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly, but go ahead and look back at one of the other explanations if you want a little bit of a more in-depth explanation about how to do FOIL. But in order to multiply two parentheses together, we're going to use FOIL. So first we multiply the first positions together. 2 times 1 is 2. Then the outer positions, 2 times -4i is minus 8i. Then the inner positions, 8i times 1 is plus 8i. Didn't I tell you the i's would drop away? And then the last position, 8i times -4i is minus 32i squared. Now let me erase this. Don't worry. I know you've already committed it to memory. If you haven't, I'll bring it back up in just a second. Now minus, because that was all of that parentheses, minus 3, the first position, 3 times 6 is 18. Okay. The outers is 3 times 4i, that's 12i, but I got a minus, so that's minus 12i. Okay. The inners is minus 12i, but times a minus is plus 12i. Smart kids mess up the negatives. Smart kids mess up the negatives. What do dumb kids do? Well, there are no dumb kids because everybody messes up negatives. Therefore, everybody is smart. Watch your negatives. Okay. So that was the inner, minus 12i, but then times that minus there gives me a plus 12i, outer, inner, and then last, minus 2i times 4i is minus 8i squared, but times the minus is plus 8i squared. All right, now we're just going to combine like terms. The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of all of these i's. I got a plus 8i and a minus 8i, and those cancel out to 0. I got a minus 12i plus 12i, and that cancels out to 0. Ooh, it's looking better already. So now I've got 2. I'm going to combine like terms now. I've got a 2 and a -18. A plus 2 plus a -18 is a minus 16. And I got negative 32i squared plus I squared is negative 24i squared. Now all I'm going to do is every time I see an I squared, I'm going to replace it with a -1, because remember, I squared equals -1. So I have -16 minus 24 times -1. And I write this out because I am not going to miss a negative. I'm not going to go through all of this just to miss a negative at the very end. What does that equal? -16 plus 24, and that equals 8. And I have an 8. And guess what? That is the answer. So that is all the I's made simple. They're really just that simple. Know those two things, and you have got this. All right, if you continue on, you'll see me explaining all the rest of this diagnostic test. See ya.